Last week I released a video called App-like UX and PWAs. I find this a topic that's really interesting to me, right? What the UX feels like when you go from a regular website to, a full-fledged PWA or web app that's trying to replace a native desktop experience. Like that kind of weird, uncanny valley that people often get wrong is super interesting, and I hope to make some more videos about it soon. But for now, one of the commenters, Justin, asked whether he could see the source code to the Notes application. So first thing first, if you go to the links in the comments or whatever, then you'll see that there's a link to a GitHub gist with the source code. You can copy it and have a look. It's pretty simple. But what I thought I'd do is actually talk you through how I built this application with a bit of a screencast. So let's get started and have a look. Wake up. There we go. What I've got is a button to create new notes, and I've got two notes, which are basically my articles. These are draggable by default, and I can drag them around, although it doesn't do anything because by default, HTML5 drag and drop is quite pretty and it works really well, but it has no implicit behavior. I can't drop it on my desktop. I can't do anything interesting with this note. I can also type in these because they are just text areas. I'm a text area. For this demo, I'm just going to hide CSS and HTML because they're not really interesting. I'm also going to make it a little bit bigger so it's easier to read. Now, firstly, a bit of a confession. I'm not going to be typing this in as live typing because I did that and it took about 20 minutes to record this video, and that's way too long. To start with, let's add the create behavior. So this is a handler on this create button. So when I press it, when the page reloads, I can create more notes. Yay! This just creates a bunch of elements and sticks them on the page. Bam, really easy. This is a nice little trick that you can read more about. I've got a link in the description. The next thing I want to do is give a bit of visual feedback when I'm dragging. So these two handlers here, drag start and drag end, basically say that anything that's inside this main area, when I drag it, make sure I actually make the real element give it this class of dragged, which really just makes it a bit transparent. The users won't be confused that they have two of the same note. It'll be really clear that the thing they're dragging around is a representation of the thing on the page, which kind of doesn't exist anymore. Works really well. The next step is a drag over behavior. So what this means is when I drag one element over another, I want to do something. Now this is the logic. I'm not doing anything yet. This is just business logic to say I'm keeping track of the active note that I'm dragging. So if I don't have one, obviously don't let me drag. And if I can't find the closest draggable thing to drag over, then don't do anything. This might happen if I'm dragging in the sort of white space between the notes, right? I'm technically dragging over main, but not over another element. So I want to make sure I'm not doing anything weird. So the logic here is a bit strange. When I move this note on top of this note, for instance, I want it to go in front of it. But in this case, I want this note to go behind it. It all depends on the ordering of where you lay stuff out. So this little space here, I'm going to add a bit of tricky logic. Firstly, I'm going to drag in this code and say, the thing I'm dragging is active drag note. I want to compare it with the thing I'm dragging over. If it's before that, I want to insert it similarly before it. There actually isn't an insert after method. Maybe I'm wrong actually, but let's go with this for now. And the way to do insert after is to say, well, I want to insert this thing before my target's next sibling. So essentially, yeah, after my current element. So now, as I move this guy around, you've got this logic which basically does half of what we want, right? Look at this, right? It's pretty cool. These notes just move around. I'm not even technically dropping them, and they're rearranging in the list, which is really nice. Now, the whole point of this video is to undo and redo, which is the whole UX nice affordance thing. So let's now add this. We've got to go back up to the undoer at the top. So this undoer here is this library which I wrote a couple of years ago. It's got a blog post if you are curious about it. You can read it on dev.to here. And we're going to use it we've imported already by unpackage as an ES6 module. I'm going to generate a few helpers. So this firstly is a thing that generates the list of notes. This is the state that I'm undoing and redoing to. Turns out when I change the text, that's the browser doing it for me. But when I want to undo and redo the contents of the list, the ordering of the list, this notes list method returns me quite literally the current order of these notes. This is really handy because this is the state I want to record in my undoer. If I move these around, I want to be able to undo back to a previous state. And the way I implement that previous state is by clearing the current contents and appending the notes as they were before. Initially, I pass generate notes list, which basically says when the page loads, store the initial state as generate notes list. Of course, I'm not pushing any new state into undoer, right? Like it doesn't know that I'm doing any reordering, and Control-Z doesn't do anything right now, except the text, of course. So, two things I want to add this event to are, one, when I create a note, so allow me to remove the note I just created. So let's try that out. Create, Control-Z, Control-Z. And I can even redo them. Control-Z, undo, and so on and so forth. The second one is a little trickier. So when I move these guys around and I drag it up and down, I actually don't want this to create undo, redo, stack events, because it turns out, users will just muck with this. This is like a nice UI thing they just play with. I don't want that to transition up and down a million times as I was moving the element around. So what I want to do is add a drop event here at the bottom. So notably, like, drop doesn't do anything, right? When I drop the note, it's actually already in the right place. But what I do now is I actually put this in the right position in the undo redo stack. So as I add more notes and say this is a note, I can drag this guy up here, undo it with Control-Z or redo it. And turns out I can even use the browser's built-in menus and undo support to undo this event, right? That's one of the huge benefits of using my little libraries, because this is really in the undo stack. It's not just a Control-Z or Control-Shift-Z. It is actually undoing a redoing, just like I would, do with my keyboard. So honestly, there you have it. It's a pretty simple single-page notes app. It doesn't save anything. It doesn't do online anything. It just lets you reorder notes and type some stuff in. It could be the basis of something great. I hope it is. I'm not going to ask you to, like the video. That's a thing people ask on YouTube. But I do have a blog if you are interested, which I'm trying to write more on. I typically syndicate the post to dev.to as well. But if you're into RSS feeds, I'm a big fan, then feel free to go along and click on that blog and add it to your feeds. So see you later.